Thank you. Tēnā rā tātou katoa, wehi mai nei. Mutira koutou mā. Irongi tipurangi. Kia ora. Thank you everybody for coming. Well, ngā mihi hoki kia koutou ngā whakatira. And where am I talking to? To that black box. Yours. Yeah. Thank you. Well, unlike my erstwhile colleagues who can stick to 8 minutes, I'm more like a 58-minute person. So this is a challenge. So I'm going to give it my best shot, but I know I've got a big cheeky and another one here. Thank you for that, kōrero. I was really thinking about that, especially those last comments around monocultures to polycultures, because it really is, I think, an example of maybe how we would think about approaching land management in kaitiakitanga. So I think I'm going to take a slightly different approach too, or a complementary approach to the kōrero so far, and think about the human aspect. And I want to just think about adaptation from the point of view of community. So I've got 4 basic topics that I want to talk about. The first one is enhancing kāinga. The second one is cooperation between councils and kāinga. And I know we have a kōrero a little bit later on from a council point of view. The third one is about cooperation between mātauranga and Western science, and I'll see if we have time to talk about that. And the final one is cooperation between kāinga and catchment farming communities as well. So a couple minutes on each of those, and I'll keep looking that way. You might just have to jump out at me. I promise, I'll try not to do Māori time. Just gonna be close. Yeah, it's good we're close. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the coastal context really, because, you know, in policy language and in policy advice, you know, the terms managed retreat and managed relocation are the big ones right now. But I think firstly and foremostly, you know, the first terms as Māori we want to talk about is enhancing kāinga and enhancing mana. Can you imagine it? We go up to the doors of a marae or a kāinga and say, oh, we need to talk about managed retreat. It's a little bit overwhelming. So these are very complex problems, complex issues. So we do need to think about them very, very carefully and case by case. And obviously we need to think about them very positively. And the dynamics then are going to change. And for the communities that we're involved in, and actually Sophie and I are involved in a climate change project at the moment. I'm involved in a couple of other big climate change projects. These are some of the messages that are coming through to us from our kāinga and the marae communities. There's a lot of fear and a lot of worry about their futures. Think about the nannies, the 80, the 90-year-olds. What does their future look like when they think, well, how are we going to leave our whenua? What about our aspirations and our needs? What about our connections to our whenua? What about the connections of our tupuna that we are thinking about on a daily basis as well? It's not just about us, it's actually about those that have gone before us. So for them, enhancing kāinga is actually some of the kupu that they think about. It's a simple thing, but it's an important thing to start there. So that's one of the whakaaro. So language matters. Tangata and whenua matters. The other thing they talk about often, and this seems to be pretty obvious as well, is when councils and kāinga are going to be at the table, who really is at the table and who should be at the table? How are the decisions made? And who is going to think about the others that aren't at the table when we're thinking about a descendant community? What do we mean by kāinga? So if we're looking at the face-to-face community, the marae, it is those that are there, but for Māori, the majority don't live there. So when we're thinking about intergenerational planning, we're thinking about those that not only aren't there, the majority, but we're thinking about the many others, the future generations that may want to come back. Come back where? Simple questions, difficult answers. So these issues obviously are urgent, and regional and district councils, central government, alongside kāinga, obviously wanting to do something about these things, but in many cases are a long way off from modelling steps to enhancing kāinga in these coastal contexts. It's also not too clear what general Crown and local government responsibilities are in terms of te tiriti in protecting rangatiratanga, except that there is acknowledgement that the responsibilities exist. Clearly, these terms, te tiriti, are important. So cooperation between mātauranga and Western science is important. It was good to hear some of those examples that we just saw. I'll just quickly jump though to cooperation between councils and kāinga. So one of our communities, they just participated in the Western Bay of Plenty and the Bay of Plenty Regional Council long-term plans. And they talked about their needs and aspirations from a climate change perspective. That sort of stuff is important, but they're also saying, no mai haere mai, come to us, help us develop our own climate adaptation plans. Again, simple idea, complex problem. There is the solution that can be replicated and should be everywhere. At a kāinga face-to-face level, not necessarily at an iwi level, maybe. Iwi have a place to tautoko and support at the local level. It's where the effects are felt, at the marae, at the kāinga. So that's where the effort needs to be placed, properly resourced, they're asking. And what about access to also to data held in councils, maybe readily accessible online, and help with interpreting some of that data too. Those are the kinds of things they're saying. That's where cooperation can lie. Last one, cooperation, kāinga and farming communities. Obviously, farming communities need to build their own, develop their own farm plans by 2025. Mentioned kāinga wanting to develop their own plans, adaptation plans, and asking for help, rangatiratanga in action. That's at the local micro scale. Build up what is shared between us in a catchment. Climate change doesn't stop at legal boundaries of properties. Think of the awa, think of the whenua collectively. What may we share in innovation, kaupapa? What may we share in resources together to collectively address the issues that face us in this wider area? The kind of things you were just talking about there too. What can we do together? One farm might not be able to afford the technology innovation issues. Certainly our Māori farm might face the same ideas too, but collectively we should be doing something together. I have yet to see a climate adaptation plan done on a catchment scale that is together with the marae, together with the farms too. There are several catchment groups being formed around the country, usually at the initiative of regional councils. One example is our community at Waitangi. Have I got a minute? At Waitangi, their last plan, I think in 2017 for their river, doesn't even address climate change at all. Imagine the opportunities, imagine the possibilities, imagine the commonalities that each share. A lot of work to be done, but together, I think the work will be lighter. Kia ora.
Kia ora.